Welcome back to the Magic Sponge podcast, a miracle cure for all your rugby league injury issues. I'm Brien. I'm the guy behind NRL Physio, all the stuff you see on socials. We are back for our final podcast of the year. It's a bit sad, but it means that footy content or footy is only about 4 months away now, which is pretty cool. We're here on a Sunday night. Big weekend, the first weekend after all the internationals are finished. So when better to wrap up the season? My co-host, James, you are here, mate. How are you mourning the rugby league calendar being over, mate? How are you feeling?
Yeah, Brian, it is sad, but I'm very, very excited for the accountability session that we had tonight. Much anticipated accountability session. We saw the end of the Pac champs and I guess the circadian rhythm, the weather's warming up. It feels like cricket season. So it's good to wrap up the footy and get hungry for 2025 onto bigger and better things, I reckon.
100%, mate. And if we're going to, I'd be accountable for our preseason takes, we had to get the ultimate expert who joins us every preseason to go through particularly draft content. But Simo of the BDE podcast, how are you, mate? It's good to have you on. And I think you had some crackers this year. So, but good and bad. So we'll call you out on both.
Yeah, thanks, mate. It's good to be back on. A bit of accountability is always good. I think you probably hyped me up a little bit too much this year. Probably set the bar a bit higher last year. So, yeah, well, I probably deserve what's coming to me this year, but that's what it's all about, I guess, is hot takes and owning up to them, really.
Mate, I don't think you could ever live up to the magic of Jermaine Asako like going again. Like even
Yeah,
I mean, James is red hot. Tommy Talau, as good as it was, I don't know if I still think that Jermaine Asako will live in infamy. So, and I'm glad you did it on this podcast, mate, because
that's right.
It was an exclusive, Magic Sponge
Like
exclusive. But we'll probably be a bit dusty tonight, guys, off season, where it took me, about 45 minutes longer to set everything up tonight, just trying to not in that week in, week out. But we'll see how we go. Let's get into it. We're over on YouTube. If you want to watch three beautiful men talk about footy, head on over there, NRL Physio. You'll see us on there. Look, you know why you're here usually, but tonight we'll touch on the injuries at the start, but then we're going to go through the big accountability session of all our preseason takes. And then special treat, we've got the Golden Sponge Awards, the Magic Sponge final end of year. We're going to go through things like, injuries, coaching bedshits, wonderful things just to talk through and run through for us what the highs and lows of the 2024 season were. So, look, without any further ado, let's get into the injury wrap for the off season, which is brought to you by PainPod, drug-free pain relief anyone can use. And use the promo code NRLP for 12% off any PainPod products.
I don't know exactly what he's done. I would have thought it was an ankle, but I'm just guessing.
He shouldn't be out for a long period of time. I mean, I'm no doctor. We have to wait for the scans, obviously, but that'd be more positive than negative.
Before the much vaunted end of season awards, we're just going to talk quickly about injury wraps for the off season. There's a few players here who've got pretty big names and they're probably fairly fantasy relevant for 2025. So Brien, to start off with, we're going to go Nathan Cleary, Dylan Edwards and Blaize Talagi, all the shoulder reconstructions. I guess we're probably looking at a bit of an impact to start a season for these players, aren't we?
Yeah, mate. I think the interesting thing with this is all of them are having those reconstructions sort of so late in inverted commas in the off season. I think Edwards and Talagi obviously because they've played internationals, but then Cleary, he hasn't played any internationals, but something as simple as the surgeon that they wanted to do the surgery was on annual leave for I think a month after the grand final or something like that. And they obviously were very set on this particular surgeon. So they waited for him to get back. So I think with all of them, Edwards and Talagi are a week later than Cleary to get theirs done. But leaves them about between 16 and 17 weeks between surgery and round one because they're obviously in Vegas, which is a bit of a stitch up for the Panthers because, if they weren't, they'd have an extra 2 weeks, all these boys, to get right. So they all had Ladege shoulder reconstruction, which is, the name of the French guy who effectively invented this shoulder reco. It's a different type of shoulder reco. It really locks the shoulder down. So they get a bone graft, they put it at the front of the shoulder joint to really stabilize it. It can restrict movement in certain, areas or certain ranges of movement. But the main thing with them is to try and prevent any redislocation down the track. So it's got about a 2 to 4% failure rate versus usually somewhere in that 6 to 10% range for other shoulder recos. So it does reduce that failure rate quite a bit, but it really sort of locks down the shoulder. It's nothing to be too concerned about in the long run, but what everyone will be wondering is, with 16, 17 weeks, what are we talking about for round one, particularly for Nathan Cleary? He's going to be the big one, I would say, and Blaize Talagi too, starting a new club. There might be some opportunities there. So past NRL examples of this, there's not too many because often guys will kind of get this and it ends their season. So you can't really see that kind of, X number of weeks. But probably the best example is Gareth Widdop. So he had it. It wasn't one of the ones that failed. So it was his third shoulder reconstruction. He had a Latarjet shoulder reconstruction and he had that early in the season and came back in 16 weeks. But there have been, it's probably more commonly happened in AFL where players have returned pretty consistently in that 12 to 14 week range. One guy even accelerated it and returned in 8 weeks. So it's one that has a bit of a range there, but the common is around that 4 months, around 16 weeks. So that's obviously bang on for Cleary. The question has been, do you think? I think this far out, it's really hard to say whether they're going to play him. I think it tosses up between it's Vegas and Vegas is a big event and people will want to play Vegas. But also, as we've seen from Penrith time and time again, they are prioritizing winning the comp. In the business end, they're not prioritizing like meaningless in inverted commas sort of round games. They're always going to play for that final. So my gut sort of says that they give him the extra 2 weeks, just leave him in Australia and kind of for now, but I guess we'll see how that rehab progresses. What I want to throw to you boys as the professionals here in the SuperCoach realm, I'll give you guys the titles. Especially, I'll throw to you first, Simo. From a draft perspective, let's say we know when you're drafting next year that Nathan Cleary isn't playing round one, but he's expected to be back in round two. Does that change how you draft him at this point in time?
With that scenario being laid out, I don't think it changes anything with Cleary. If anything, it does help the fact that he's going to be fresh when he does return, ready to rock and roll. So he's going to be basically the first overall pick in most drafts getting around. So I think for me to really be worried about Cleary and I'm trying to think of a round level that would move the needle, it'd have to be coming out that he'd be missing like the first month for me to be really concerned. So yeah, as it stands, I think I just would take him first overall and be happy with that.
Yeah, no, I agree, mate. And James, from a classic perspective, a similar question. That I think it's much more interesting in classic because for me in draft, I'm taking him number one. Yeah, even Simo, even if it's as you say, maybe a month, you might start to move it. But yeah, once again, I'm a bit of a draft to win it in the finals, not the first couple of weeks. But I think from a classic perspective, where you'd have to try and get around trading him in or trading him out or like whatever you want to do. James, same scenario. He's not playing round one. He's expected to play in round two. Will you swallow having him on your bench in round one? He's probably going to be $900,000. Are you swallowing that, or are you going to start with somebody else and kind of try and bring Cleary in later?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't start with Cleary. That probably might be a bit hot, I suppose. The only sentiment behind that is historically, this probably goes to like guys play 7, guys play 6, historically start the season a bit slower as well. I think we've seen that time and again. I know there's a few guys in the other social content space that talk about, how halves start the season a little bit slowly. So maybe your option is, start without Cleary. Hopefully he sheds a little bit of coin and catch him on the swing with someone else. But, I think the rule of fantasy is like if Nathan Cleary's playing, you select him. Like that's the golden rule. But it's an annoying one in round one because you won't see the price rise or drop till round 4. But I think if that was the scenario, I would probably be going without as it stands right now, mate, to be fair.
Yeah, and I actually it kind of excites me from a classic perspective in a weird way and we're all draft people, from way back. We all love our draft, and we kind of, have definitely transitioned to classic in recent times, particularly with this podcast and kind of getting things. But one of our number one complaints a lot is teams are so similar, right? Like everybody has the same team, whereas something here, this is going to vary teams big time, I reckon. If if he starts round one, everyone's going to have him, right? And I'm not, from my perspective, and I'm sure you boys are the same. I'm not concerned about him coming off a shoulder reconstruction as a half in terms of like his performance or anything like that. He's going to be fine. If he was a hooker or a front rower who's got to make 50 tackles, yeah, maybe, but not for a half. You're not even thinking twice about it. But I almost secretly hope that he misses round one and there's that round two expectation, so that it just varies some teams a little bit. Like some people will take the risk and they'll start with him. Others will take the risk and not do it and try and bring him in later. So selfishly, I hope it does kind of go that way. And that's where my gut sort of sits at the moment, but we'll see how his rehab progresses. Cause as we've seen, as we spoke about, AFL guys have returned in that like 12 to 14 week range, which would mean he would be fit a month out from round one, 12 weeks if that's how they do it. So it'll be interesting, but we'll talk about that a lot more come the preseason next year, I'm sure.
Yeah, certainly been interesting to watch, Brien. I think the other names we've got here just to discuss quickly while we're at the off-season is Cameron Murray with a wrist surgery coming up. So doom and gloom on social media by the Bunny saying that he's in jeopardy for round one. That seems probably fairly unlikely though, Brien, I would say.
Yeah, mate. Wayne Bennett said 6 months. I was
Yeah,
like,
which
oh.
I'd be dementia setting in for Wayne. I don't know what's going on.
But to be fair, like the one thing that I said is like look at how the Souths have gone lately with their injuries, right? Like,
Yeah, it's fair.
Campbell Graham, we're going to talk about Junior Tatola in a second. Like they've just, you pretty much think about the worst case scenario for injuries and they've had them all. Like all of them have just been worst case scenario. So what I have to say is I haven't tracked anyone take more than 5 months to come back from this surgery that he had, which is a scapholunate ligament reconstruction. So it's usually like 12 to 15 weeks is kind of the usual range, which is, 3 to just under 4 months. But it can extend out to about that 5 months. But I think when he got it done, he was looking at, like similar to Cleary, probably a little bit sooner, like around that 18 weeks to round one, 17, 18 weeks. So there's a really good red hot chance that he's okay for round one. I won't put anything past South with the run that they've had of all these bad injuries. But it is one for me though, being like Cam Murray wasn't all that great for SuperCoach purposes this year. Going into next season, potentially he might miss a game or two at the start of the year. I think the carry-on was pretty crazy from the media in terms of, playing for Kangaroos, and they were talking about salary cap dispensation, which you need to miss 12 weeks for. Just ridiculous. But I think from a SuperCoach perspective, he's probably someone who I wouldn't be chasing all that hard, both from a classic or a draft perspective, because once again, is a middle forward, it's a wrist. It'll just limit him a little bit in that preseason preparation. I think it'll be good for him, like just to freshen him up and stuff like that. But not someone who I'm chasing after. Simo, you the same, and then on to James, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an interesting one, isn't he, Cam Murray? Because like the injury's obviously one thing, but you've also got the role in what he's going to do there at the Bunnies. It was a bit weird to see Ben Hornby playing on an edge for a lot of last year, just so that they could accommodate Kalamatangi going through the middle. Obviously, that didn't last for too long, but it's just one of those ones like you'd hate to see him wind up on an edge if either Arrow's slow coming back or they can't sort out what's happening on the other edge there. So I'm not too concerned about him long term, SuperCoach wise, because he's just a gun player. But he's not someone in the short term I'd be super keen on, just until sort of see how the Ducks lay with Bennett coming in there and what he wants to do.
I wonder if Bennett takes the leaf out of if Bennett takes the leaf out of like what he did at the Finns, maybe Simo. I just like see what he did with Maxi Plath at 13. does he have the same sort of thing in mind for Cam Murray? Maybe, I don't know. It's a bit of a gamble.
Where would
he's got
you
the
play
pedigree, doesn't he?
Talagi in that?
I still love him on an edge. I really like him at right edge. I think that's where he had a really good 2022. And then, he was there for little bits last year, but I thought he was really exceptional there in 2022. He was on the sort of the back of, like Lockie Ilias and Campbell Graham had that huge season. I thought he was really good on the right edge. I don't know why they moved him away from that personally. He can also play left edge as well. Like, I think like Keon goes both sides and he's good in the middle, but I quite liked him at right edge. He's got a big right foot, good close to the line. I didn't mind him there. I don't know. I think it'd be interesting to see what plays out there, to be fair. For the Rabbitohs. Any other points, boys, or we move on to the next one? We'll go to Paul Alamoti next, who I guess semi blew up this year, didn't he, after the move to Penrith from the Bulldogs there? Elbow dislocation from the Pac Champs, as I'll call them, not the Pacific Championships, because I like the Pac Champs, I like the ring of that. But we're not expecting him to miss time next year, Brien, are we? Just elbow dislocation. That really shouldn't impact his off-season too much either.
Yeah, just a quick one. I pretty much said it in the socials, but I have had people still freaking out in the DMs and the mentions. Yeah, he'll be fine. 6 to 8 weeks, and sweet for next year. No concerns. Good. I reckon he's probably going to be my call for that elite CTW. I reckon he can go into that echelon next year.
Nice one, mate. We'll just wrap it up quickly with Junior Tatola then, boys, because he's had a really, really complicated journey following a foot fracture, Brien, wasn't it? He was a Jones fracture in his 5th Met, I think, from memory. And that happened back was that sort of like round 10-ish or round 8-ish or something like that? It was ages ago, Brien, wasn't it? So he's been missing footy for a long time. Do you want to run us through, I guess, the complications that he's faced and had to endure up until now? And I guess, will we see the best of him next year? I guess is the big question, isn't it?
Yeah, mate. Like exactly what we were talking about before. Souths, if you spelled out the worst case scenario for these injuries, like you get Campbell Graham, needing surgery on a sternum, when we've only seen that happen once before in the last 20 years, which was Jack Bird, who had like a congenital from birth defect in his sternum, and his Campbell Graham needing that surgery. And now you've got Junior Tatola with a foot. Now we carry on about 5th Met fractures specifically. It's the bone at the base of the pinky toe is the best way to describe it, on the outside of that midfoot. It's got a poor blood supply, so it is tricky for healing. It's very tricky. It can have, but this is next level. Like he not only didn't heal well, but so he had the first surgery, the bone didn't heal, didn't take. Then he's had a second surgery with bone grafting, and it still didn't take all that well. So he had to spend more time off his foot. So effectively he was off his foot for 6 months. Like he didn't put weight on it through it for 6 months, which is just, crazy stuff. And so he's pretty much learning to walk again, is the footage that's coming out recently, because he just hasn't been able to put weight on it. So super unpredictable in terms of like next year recovery wise. I mean, I'm concerned for him, because you just don't know. It's a bit like the Pap situation, right? When he fractured his patella so horrifically and had such an extended like healing process. You just don't know how that's going to respond to load as he starts to get back to running and those kind of things. So unfortunately for South fans, there's just no certainty there. He could be there for round 1, but once again, he's someone who, coming off a really limited off season, I just wouldn't be chasing all that heavily. So very very uncertain times in the middle forwards for the Bunnies. And so I think that, it just adds a bit more fuel to, Simo's question before, or where do you play Kaloa Matangi? Because, I mean, if Tatola's not okay by early next year, they're going to be, pretty short in those middle forwards. So potentially does Kaloa Matangi play, does he play front row? Like he might need to.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Like he played a fair few games in the number 8 last year and was just a SuperCoach demon in those games. So I think fantasy-wise, you're happy to see him anywhere. If you can have a bit of dual Kalomatangi, it'd be quite nice as well. But they're certainly not a team, South, that can afford any more injuries. You've obviously got Schuster coming in there. Where he's going to play remains to be seen as well. So obviously Bent's going to have plans for him in the future.
I forgot about Magic Sponge favourite
with,
Josh Schuster. But there's your right or left edge lockdown the entire year. Like you don't even need to worry about an edge. It's sorted. He's out. Like that's what there's your call for next year, James. Straight away. I know you're a big fan of JS.
Not a huge one there, as people be well aware. I don't really rate people that have done their previous rehab journeys in KFC. I think it's one of my calls that I said with Joshy after coming back from whatever amount of calf strains that he had. So I think on Tatola, like he's going to be juicily priced for SuperCoach, for standard. He's probably still not really worth a punt at this stage, I don't think, just because of the uncertainty there, Brien. So good wrap up to start off with before we launch into, I guess, the accountability session proper. But before we get into our best and worst preseason calls, Brien and Simon, I just want to ask you firstly, Brien, down the barrel, what did SuperCoach teach you this year that you're going to take into 2025? What were the harsh lessons that SuperCoach inflicted on you and your emotional well-being?
Yeah, I think for me it was the backs and CTW, like just getting the ceiling guys there. It's just more and more moving away from stacking the forwards for me, and this is both like draft and classic for me. It's scoring is a massive part of it, obviously, and if you look at the upper end of scoring, there's just so many of those, and particularly CTW, I think was the surprise. Like you had your fullback guns as per usual, but you just the leagues that I did well in from a draft perspective, and when I did well in classic, it was when I brought in those center wings who just like dropped 90s for me for a month, and I just picked up so many rankings just from those guys going crazy. And I think of the 6 leagues I was in, I had Kiraz and Lomax in 4 of them, I think, for 4 of the 6. And it was one of my best draft years across the board. And I reckon it was mainly down to those 2 guys, like just having those 2 across the board. So for me, and they're way more fun to watch. Like, that's the biggest thing, is it's so good watching those guys do their thing. Nothing against the nut truckers, obviously. We still respect the big men. But yeah, that's probably my biggest lesson moving forward. Simo, have you got any knowledge bombs for us?
Yeah, look, we love a watchability index player, that's for sure, and backs is where that's at, no doubt about it. For me, I think the biggest takeaway is similar to you, just probably more just honing in on the hooker position in general. Like a lot of people in draft in particular took Harry Grant with a late first round, early second round pick. Most of the year he didn't live up to sort of that billing, despite the fact that he was still one of the better hookers getting around in SuperCoach. I just feel like it just proved to me that hooker was one of those spots that I'm okay to just wait and get someone sort of lower down, sort of mid-range is fine, and not be too concerned about it. So until things change in that regard, look, hooker's a spot for me. I'm just not going to invest a high sort of draft capital pick into. As to some of the other positions, I mean, fullback's just so deep, and it's just getting deeper by the year. I think next year, like assuming the hammer will be fullback only, just makes it even that little bit more deep as well. Obviously, you've got Keanu Kinney, who's really come on at the Titans and blown up as well. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of depth there at the fullback spot. And like you mentioned earlier in the pod, like we like a bit of spice in fantasy where everyone doesn't have the same team. And the fact that fullback is this deep, getting that particular position right is going to be paramount. So it's one of those ones that you're probably going to spend your money in that spot, because if you miss the boat there, you're going to regret it. But I mean, it's easy to say, but getting it right is just really the key factor there. So that'll separate teams for sure next year. And probably my last takeaway is just halfback in general. I mean, Sammy Walker will be coming off an ACL. DCE's 35 years of age. Benny Hunt changing teams. So obviously, we're going to have Cleary, we're going to have Jerome Hughes, Nico Hines is like the big 3. But outside of that big 3, I'm sort of worried about the halfback position sort of early days. So locking up one of those spots is probably behind my priority list going into 2025 drafts and also classic circles. That's probably it for me, though. What about you there, James? What are you changing going into 2025?
Yeah, like your calls there, boys. I think the ones that I sort of just mentioned here quickly was probably be more inclined to drop a gun if they're at a high price and they're going to shed coin. I think there was a situation, Brian, in the year where Nico was nearly $1 million, and I think he's coming off a low score. He's going to shed heaps of coin. I think we both made the call of, we'll just write it out. You don't want to trade out a gun. And then he had an ankle syndesmosis injury and, sheds coin. We had to trade him anyway. And we could have had Jerome Hughes in there just pumping big scores and probably, even banking a bit of coin at that time. So that was probably one of my things was I think we're very inclined to get someone at a low price. And then when they've got a really low break even, get them in. But similarly, we probably need to think it like the other way. If someone's at a high price and they're maxed out, maybe trade them in. But the other one, when I looked on reflection, guys, is like, do you go non-elite fullback in draft especially? Like, this was so interesting because in standard, like, look at these guys that pumped out coin that came in that were so unknown to start the season. So Keanu Keeney made 440K. Jaden Campbell maxed out at 812K. Fletcher Sharp, 450K gain. David Armstrong, 250K gain. Trey Fuller, 220 and 2 price rises. Leo Hopewadi made 350. Heath Mason, like, for the Tigers there, made, like, nearly 150 as well. So I think it just gives you that extra credence to draft is that if you don't hit the big fullbacks, double dip or play the waiver game, and you're probably going to get pretty good outcomes there. But I think it might even make an argument to how your teams get set up in standard. Like, you definitely want to have the fullback eligible guys in your center and 5'8" position, but it might also mean that you get a gun and then you get a position secondarily that you rotate that you can make quick bickies from. So I just thought on reflection, like maybe it's worthwhile thinking about these things as you go into next year as to how you construct your team. So I guess historically, I know me and you did this, Brian, this year, Turbo and Ponga straight out the gate. But do you actually just go, well, maybe I balance the team out elsewhere and I put one big fullback and I just put the armband on them every week and rotate through? Like, it would be interesting to do a sort of a comparison, I think, with those avenues. I think you're still going to go with the two big guns where you can because the averages are superior. But man, you can make some money if you hit on the right guys at the right time. You can hit it pretty quickly as well. So I think that'd be interesting to watch for next year. I might do a team in my wife's name and run the fullback gauntlet and maybe just do my own thing for my team. So that might be what I do next year. So what we might do next, boys, is we're going to go into our 2024 preseason calls. We're going to do the good first and then the bad second. So we're going to start with you, Brian. What was the best call that you made leading into the season there from our initial podcast back in, was it February or March? It was ages ago, but it was way back when. What were your best takes?
Yeah, mate, we got 3 for each because, look, it was tough to get 3 for the good, but we managed to scrape and we got through. I'm very happy to say, and I don't think this is too biased in saying that by the year Jacob Kiraz was probably my best call. Like, I think I had him down in the injury profiles. I said 70, he'll average 70 to 75 and he'll be a top 5 CTW in the year. He averaged 72 for the year, and that was the 4th highest average for CTWs and the 2nd highest points scored in the CTW. So I could not have, nailed that more. So I'm like super stoked, especially after the year before. By the year was Adam Dewey, and we all know how that went. So it's good to make that up. The other one I was really happy with was by Eli Katoa. So I kind of said injuries from 2023, had him at about 10 point per game underpriced, and he lived up to that. He went from 64 to 73 average. He was the 4th highest average in second row forward. So, really happy with that one. And then this one, I'm probably being playing a bit of heart pick here, but I was still pretty happy with the buy of Max King. Like, once again, going in the injury profiles, I said thought he'd average 60, and he hit 58. He averaged 58, even playing through a broken wrist for several weeks in the season. So, just want to say Zeus is a gun, and I'm still pretty happy with that call. Simo, what do you got for me? You actually had some belters this year.
Oh, geez. Don't know about that. It's not a big list either, but it's probably my first one's probably more of a sad one because you hate to be right on these sort of calls, but I was just not big on Tohu Harris coming into this season just gone. He looked pretty good the year before, back in 2023, but just wear and tear, a bit of age. Obviously, the knee got the better of him by the end of the year. So he was one of probably my main stay away in the 2RF. So, as I said, one of those ones you're not happy to get right, but was a good call in the end. Another one that was quite good was Matty Burton as a post-hype sleeper. at the 5'8" spot. I put my hand up and say, look, I was massive on Burton back in 2022, and he had a bit of a stinker of a year. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't anything that's going to set the world on fire either. But last year, he definitely had a good stretching of games there for the Dogs when they were humming, and the times where I thought he could have been the best 5'8" in SuperCoach, obviously with Munster out. So that was probably not a bad call. It was obviously helped by the fact that Dylan Brown had a bit of a down year by his standards, but for Burton to only average like 0.3 less than Brown per game is still not a bad shout. And the last one's probably just the hammer. I think the bloke's just a superstar, and I think we all know it. He's probably like every kid loves the hammer getting around, so it's not a hot take by any stretch, but just having him ranked highly in the CT dubs, having that duel, I was all over him this year, and he had some down games towards the end, which was a bit tough for people as they made finals. I know from experience where I know in my home league, I started him a fair few games at fullback and he pumped out a few 30s. He got moved to centre in real life, benched him, and he pumped out 100. So it was a frustrating end, but when you look at the year as a whole, it was pretty good from the hammer all around. So I'll take it as a win, even though towards the end it was a little bit shaky. But that's probably my top three there. No Jermaine Azarko calls in amongst that, but we'll try again next year. What do you there, James? Who are your good ones?
Yeah, I sort of lumped a few together, so if people humour me, I'll sort of list them off. So I said at the start, wasn't really keen on Munster, Cheese, Pappenhausen, Flegler, or DCE. I'm pretty happy with pretty much all those ones there. And I think myself and yourself spoke up Matty Burton and Jaden Campbell at 6 this year, Simon, as well. So I think that was a good one. Sam Walker was one that we slurp off regularly as well. So I think we came to an agreement on that one. And Sammy Walker was averaging 68 prior to the knee, which was, it was really good to see. Obviously, devastating now for the Roosters and enthusiasts such as myself and yourself, Simon, about that. But obviously the one I'm going to probably take my flowers for was Tommy Talau. Like, that was really not looking like a great call when he didn't make the round one team for Manly in Vegas. But then for the true believers, for those people who listen to the Magic Sponge and dial in every week, he broke out this season. Jess won the NRLW comp. Like, Tommy Talau has had an exceptional year. Let's just leave it at that. He's probably going to be the cover photo of my phone for probably the next 12 months as well. I'm really hanging on to that one as a good call because it was one I had to put my balls to the wall, but I made a fairly compelling conspiracy theory case for it. So I'm glad that people entertained it and hopefully a few more people bought into it because I didn't massively buy into it this year in standard, which really kicked me in the dick. But hopefully people got on and they sort of got some good reward from that, Brien. So over to you next, Brien. We're going to go back to you, but we're going to go to the bad now. Anything else you want to add about Tommy Talau there? Do you want to pump me up a little bit just to make my ego a bit bigger?
I'll say it's the second best call that's been made on this podcast, and it still can't come over the top of Asako.
Yeah,
as much
I
as
feel like I'm chasing Bradman there, mate.
Yeah.
Like, that's the problem with Asako. It's like you're hitting 99.94 and you can't chase it. You can't get it there, honestly. We'll try, but I mean, seriously, it's Bradman errors.
Yeah, so I think I think that's the kindest thing, the kindest compliment I can give you is that it's the second best call that's ever been made on this pod. So there you go. I think that's being very generous, and yeah, like it was amazing, and I think the level of research that went into that, James, was unlike anything else that we've seen on the pod. So I think that was very good to see as well. The bad calls for this year. A few in there for sure. I think the big one for me, which just, killed me time and time again, was avoiding AFB, Adam Fanua-Blake. I mean, we all sat on this podcast and said, look, he scored 8 tries in 2023. His previous career best was 4. Surely he can't score another 8, and he scored 8 this year, and he absolutely killed it. So
good.
We literally could not have got that. Yeah, couldn't have got it more wrong. And I didn't own him in any. I think I owned him in one draft league maybe, but didn't own him in Classic all year. So that just absolutely killed me. Avoided Garrick too. With his move to center, I just thought, that's not going to go well. And he killed it. He averaged 70 after averaging 71 the past 2 seasons. So it didn't seem to affect him at all. He kept doing what he was doing, a bit a la like a Valentine Holmes, right? Like Val went to center and was still doing his thing, and Garrick was doing the same. So I didn't see that coming. I didn't have Garrick on that kind of level. So yeah, like props to him. And then probably the big one, like I sort of said, avoid Tedesco, because if you look at the last 4 years, his average had gone 95, 87, 79, 69. And so I kind of thought Father Time had caught up a little bit. His knees, he's had those troubles over the past few years, particularly a few stem cell injections, those kind of things. And then he comes out this year and he looked amazing. Like averaged 94. So, he's gone 95, 87, 79, 69, back up to 94. Just crazy. And put my hand up, I didn't see that coming at all. Don't doubt greatness, Teddy. He cops a bad rap because Origin, people say he kills the attack or whatever, and a lot of blame goes on to him there. But he's a superstar. Like and I love watching him. So yeah, good on him. And then honorable mentions, I think I said to buy Campbell Graham before we found out about so sorry to any drafters. Obviously didn't affect any classic people because we found out before the season. But yeah, any drafters, I do apologize because I couldn't have seen Campbell Graham needing that surgery when it just is that rare. Simo, a couple of bad ones there, not too horrible. What do you got for me?
Yeah, I've got a couple the same as you actually. Teddy and AFB. Probably talk about AFB first. Like you laid it all out there. Just the tries we thought were going to be something he couldn't repeat, but we just lost track of the side that AFB is just an out and out gun when he wants to be, and this year he wanted to be. Obviously, last year at the Warriors for him, but yeah, I'll put my hand up and say I was way off on that because I thought he'd be the sort of guy that might just take it easy now that he'd signed a contract to come back over to Australia, and that might have affected his output, but boy, did he prove me wrong there. So, yeah, I've got a lot to say about AFB, maybe a bit later in the pod, but definitely one that I'll put my hand up and I regret it massively that he was a dislike for mine. Probably my most embarrassing one is the Teddy one. I believe I actually got to a point in the preseason where I was umming and ahhing about Paps over Teddy, and I can't remember if I ever had to do it in any leagues. I don't think I had to, but yeah, the fact that that's even a discussion, and that's what my thought process was back then, it's pretty embarrassing when you look back now. And Teddy averaged in the 90s, as you said. So just the fact that Paps didn't get the goal kicking at any point this year was just a massive letdown on his value. And obviously just the base stats are not quite there with Paps the first year back. So probably didn't put quite enough emphasis into just the recovery from his injuries and that sort of thing that you guys are obviously so good at. So probably one that, going in next year might be a bit of a lesson learnt. And the last one that was pretty ordinary was sort of buying into like mid-range 2RFs, Piakura, Siwa Wong. Remember getting Siwa Wong really late in one of my home leagues, and I was pumped about it. Teamless Tuesday, his damn second row, had a Barry Crocker, and he was barely back all year. Played Reggie's pretty much like 90% of the year. Like, I mean, I didn't know how many games he played for the Roosters, but he would have gone close to playing more for Tonga at the end of the year here than he did.
Christian Wolf's getting in his ear, mate. A little bit of a sea change up to the Mighty Finns could be on the cards. Just throwing it out there.
Don't blame you. Do not blame you at all. And look, as a Roosters guy, it does annoy me because I'm a massive Siwa fan. So for him to fall through the cracks would be rough. So yeah, if that is on the cards, mate, well done to you. But yeah, Wong and Piakura just didn't eventuate. So they're my bad ones. Before I throw to you, James, one that you and I are probably both guilty of, I'll just throw in a fourth, is just Latrell Mitchell. Like, we were vibing Latrell, thought it was a big year coming. I don't know, like, fool me once, fool me twice. It's like, they'll probably fool me again next year. But yeah, tough one on Latrell. So I'll probably pass over to you to kind of share in on that one a little bit.
Yeah, I do have deja vu recalling us discussing Latrell and talking him up, and I do remember saying, look, how the chassis looks in the Charity Shield will dictate how big I am on him. Chassis didn't look great at the time. That was after we spoke, and I thought, oh, don't know about this, and it sort of came to fruition. So I think my call stands again is like, if Wayne gets in there and he's looking the absolute business, maybe I get sucked in again. It's a bit. I feel like TPJ. I feel like the honey trap here with Latrell. I just feel like when he's on, he's so on. And he still averaged really well this year when he was fit. But by God, the injury risk and the soft tissue risk is just so high there. The end of season stuff was really funny as well. Not if you drafted him, because obviously you were hanging on to him being back for the end of the year. So if you're a drafter, you got doubly burnt by us. So I will put my hand up and apologise to Latrell drafters. I think I was one in a couple of comps as well. So I sort of kicked my own ass there. But it was a frustrating watch. The bunnies fell way off. The coaching stuff blew up. Nothing really went right for the Rabbitohs this year. So I guess you've got to make a decision as a draft next year. Is Latrell just that superstar ceiling with the goal kicking at fullback, or is this a risk that you're not willing to own, and he'll sort of drop down a little bit? So I think that's one to look into from that point of view. In the same vein, I was pretty high on Ben Trbojevic this year, and that didn't really work out either. Dual position, thought he'd get left edge all the time, thought he'd get big minutes, but the hammy worries were there. And then when Tom wasn't playing, his ceiling was really limited. Like when Tom was there, Ben was pretty playable. He just didn't really base very well, did he? Like he sort of had a few attacking stats here and there, but he never really sort of clicked into gear as such, and he sort of never really kept his momentum going with his spot getting held down. So he'll be a watch for me next year. Like I still think the talent's there, like just like the shape, like he just looks like first grade rugby league when you look at it, if you know what I mean. I don't have a better way to describe it than that, but when you see it in the physicality, you just think, far out, this guy should be a out and out first grade footballer plus, to be honest. And then the last one from a bad call. So I was not big on Bronson Xerri off a big layoff, and also RTS coming back from rugby. So I guess RTS hit his average, so he's probably a push. I guess if you think about what Roger used to be compared to what he is now, you probably would have been a bit let down from a draft point of view and probably a standard point of view. But I think Bronson Xerri outperformed my expectations by quite a lot, actually, because we've seen guys come from long absences back to footy, whether it's Mormon missions, whether it's drug bans, whether it's other codes, and they never are the same players. But Bronson looked pretty good. He averaged, pretty consistent there for the Dogs. I think he gained about 250, 300 grand as well. So he was probably one that I thought went a little bit better than expected there, to be fair. But Roger, like I wasn't surprised he sort of hasn't hit the same heights that he did when he left, and he couldn't even really win the fullback spot, which was quite bizarre to me. I'm a little bit shocked that Andrew Webster just didn't think he was their best fullback option. Brien, I know we talked about it a lot. Did you think that was a bit of a how you going with RTS not getting much time at fullback last year?
Yeah, and you won't find a bigger chance guy than me. Like,
Yeah,
before,
totally.
like
Yeah, yeah.
I back, when Chance, I think, went to the Warriors from the Raiders, even playing at the Raiders, Chance I just have immense respect for. But yeah, I just thought at some point during the year, Roger Chance is great, but Roger won the Dally M. Like he's an absolute gun. So yeah, I'm right with you there. I thought they would at least give it 6 weeks. Put because Chance is still a really solid center. There's no problems with Chance at center either. So yeah, definitely that one was a surprise for me too.
For sure. All right, that's a good wrap there for the good and the bad, boys. We've got the end of season award categories now for the Magic Sponge. So first category we're going to talk about is the toughest effort or maniac effort of the year. Brien, who have you got for this category?
Yeah, look, there's I think we said before we came on, there's probably so many that we're missing here, and it's probably something we should take note of during the year, kind of write these guys down. But I've got kind of a podium of maniacs, which is Victor Radley playing through his fractured shoulder blade, Jake Granville playing through a torn bicep and a torn pec, and then Bailey Simonson played on the partial ACL tear for 6 weeks before rupturing it, but he had no time off, and that's pretty crazy for a partial ACL. I think if I have to go for the winner, it has to be Victor Radley. Like I know people once again hung shit on him because he didn't have his best game in the final that the Roosters lost, or it might have been the one before that as well. But yeah, this award is for the toughest effort maniac of the year, and for him to come back 3 weeks after fracturing his shoulder blade, just mental. We saw what Cooper Cronk did, and he was an absolute passenger, and I don't think Radley was on that level. So, yeah, he gets that. And then a bit of a home pick for the NRLW, but I'll say Maniac, like toughest effort of the year. Sienna Lafipo, she suffered a PCL tear in the first half of Origin 3. She came back out, went in, got assessed, came back out, and she made the run. It was about a 15, 16-meter run, got on her front, quick play the ball to set up the winning field goal. So epic effort from her to sort of do that with a torn PCL. I thought that was pretty immense NRLW-wise. Simo, who have you got for Maniac, toughest effort of the year?
Well, yeah, some good ones there from you, mate. Victor Radley, just insane. I can picture the tackle that he missed that you're talking about. And, yeah, sure, it might have been a fatigue one, but, yeah, the fact that his shoulder blade was like that at the time just is crazy to think when you look back on it now. My crazy Maniac injury of the year is Jai Arrow with that shoulder. Just from a casual fan watching it, I was saying to some of my mates watching the footy, just every week it looked like Jai Arrow was done for the year. And I kept seeing reports end of season shoulder surgery, it's going to happen now, he's going to be out for the year. But then he just keep playing. He busted up again late in the game, he'd go off, push through, play again the next week. And the fact that he just kept pushing and pushing and pushing all the way up until the point where Souths were mathematically out of the finals pretty well. I think it was just an insane effort from him. So doesn't always get the biggest props, Arrow, with some of his injuries, but for this one, I just thought, well done to you, mate. Pushing through really stood out to me. Just as more of a casual fan without sort of the knowledge base that you two have behind these sort of things. James, what do you got there for yours?
Yeah, I got one on the field. So Tristan Saylor came back in 4 weeks after ankle tightrope surgery. So that was ridiculous. We haven't seen that's the quickest it's been done, I think, Brien, since you've been keeping a record of it. But the one I wanted to add in here, and this is, I just can't sort of wrap my head around how just tough this would have been for this individual. So for Payne Haas, we obviously know the off story or the off field issues with his mum and dad this year, respectively. Both facing fairly significant jail time if that all goes the way it sounds like it's going to go. And then I guess you throw it in that this is the leader of the Broncos effectively. I know Reynolds has got the armband, but Payne's one of the leaders at that club. He played Origin this year. He had a great Origin series. He played hurt for the Broncos all year. He had early knee surgery. He played through a Lisfranc midfoot injury later the year. The Broncos are pretty sketchy with these details. But then on top of that, just throw this in. He's 24. He's got 1 or 2 kids of his own. And then I think he's become the legal guardian for all his other siblings. So I think there's another 4 or 5 siblings in the mix there. I don't know exactly, so I don't know the full family tree. But, with his mum or dad not being around, Payne's taken the whole family on as well as his own. And I just don't think, I know we're all sitting here as dads and we've got families and responsibilities outside of what we do professionally, but just to me, the thought of that and the precious situation that he finds himself in from a day-to-day point of view is just ridiculous. So the fact that he played as well as he did this year and he kept turning up for the Broncos and he never mailed it a game, I just thought personally that was insane, and I think it's a pretty big credit to Payne, regardless of how you feel about Payne Haas. I know he had some dramas in his younger years. I guess, think about myself at 18 or 19 or 20, I probably wasn't the best bloke kicking around at that age, but I think he converted to Islam, I think, when he was about 20. So he's sort of been on that path for a while now. And, the fact that he is the go-to in that family would be such big pressure from a day-to-day and a week-to-week point of view. So I think that's a enormous credit to Payne, what he was able to do this year personally. So that was my wrap-up for toughest effort this year for a couple there. Comeback player of the year, Brien. Who have you got here for comeback player of the year? Injury or SuperCoach related is next category.
Yeah, I think you boys have picked probably the standout option. So I'll just go a little bit alternative. I'll say Teddy. Yeah, we just spoke about, just crazy for what he did. But my sort of under the radar one was Mitch Barnett. He could have been in my poor call column because I didn't say it on the pod, I don't think. But in the injury profiles, I was like, look, this is a guy who's coming off a neck injury, which significantly hampered him in 2023. I just said there's no, obviously it's a wide range of outcomes, but there's every chance he's never back, to the player who was. We've seen guys who've had those neck injuries, just hesitant in the contact, never be the same kind of player again at times. And mate, Mitch Barnett came out and he was an absolute weapon all year. Like played Origin. Did he play for the Kangaroos at the end of the year as well? I think he was at least in the squad. Yeah. So I just thought for someone who I had written off as like, I thought, he was just going to be like a bench guy for the Warriors because of his neck concerns. He was crazy. So really, really good. But yeah, I do think the guy, Simo, I'll throw to you. Who is your pick? I think this guy's the standout.
Yeah, I think I've probably got the layup of the lot here, and James will probably take some from you as well. But the reason why I sort of want to say this guy is because I remember back in the preseason, James, you asked me about this particular individual and the chances of him coming back into the Roosters lineup, and I just poo-pooed it, something chronic, and I just thought there's no way. And I'm talking about Angus Crichton, just where he came from, the year he had the year just gone with the mental health issues, to come back and play Origin, play for Australia, get back to SuperCoach, like SuperCoach superstardom pretty well, back to the Gus of old, if not better. I think it's just absolutely insane. So, yeah, probably should have been one that I could have easily put in my bad calls of the year, because James, you were sort of skirting around him, and that could have been your chance, mate. That could have been it. You could have been Mark Taylor retiring on 334 and taking Bradman's mantle,
I know. I saw a glimmer there, I guess. Probably not as good as your Osako call, but I think when he opened up about the mental health battle, the mental health diagnosis, I just thought far out. Like, you just have to put all the 2023 in the bin. You just, whatever happened there, just don't worry about it. The real spanner in the works was the fact he didn't get named early in the season. And I thought, we're stuck in the Trent Robinson carousel. I was sort of a little bit worried about the other guys coming through. And then, there was all this scuttle at the early part of the year that the ARU had offered him a contract. So similar to Suoli'i, who ended up going across to rugby. I think Hamish McLennan, there's a family connection there with Crichton. And I was like, I just don't know where this is sort of sitting. He had a contract year, obviously. And then, Dave Fifita was nearly there. That was nearly a done deal. And Crichton sort of there. But, mate, all he did was he balled out this year. Once he got his spot, he just played elite this year. He was back to his absolute best. He was immense in Origin. Great for the Roosters down the stretch as well. I thought he was unbelievable last year. I sort of just, I guess that's probably a good summary for a lot of people out there is depending on people's mental health journey, like just don't ever write someone off, because you just never quite know where people can come back from that point of view, especially with, a new diagnosis like Angus sort of faced with bipolar, or whether, someone's got significant depression or anxiety, or if they've got a trauma diagnosis with PTSD. Like, you just don't know where people can come back from. And I think that's a really nice one. He spoke really candidly about this on, I can't remember what he was on, but he just said, I just didn't want to play last year. There was games that I played that he's like, I really shouldn't have been out there. And that's come out after the fact now, so it's all well and good to say it now, but it's such an interesting journey that he's had. But my goodness, he's, after Fifita, he's probably second row off the board if you want to take Tatola there, maybe. But my God, you'd be brave to take him over Angus Crichton next year, I reckon. So, yeah, that was a really interesting one, wasn't it? So we'll move on to the next category, Brien. So, craziest injury story of the year. What was your craziest story, do you reckon?
Oh, mate, the first one that came to mind was the Ronald Volkman situation. Like, we haven't come across it in footy since I've been following it. I think to this day, we still don't have a full clear picture of who was the most at fault. Like, was it Volkman's manager sort of, signing a release from the Warriors too early with the Warriors, dick him over? Did the Dragons dick him over? Who knows? He's pretty much spent this year rehabbing himself. Like, the Warriors paid for the surgery, as far as I know. But then, like, rehab wise, he's been, just doing it on his own, like, which, a lot of us have to do. But it's just unheard of in the professional sporting landscape, particularly in around the NRL, for something like that to happen. So yeah, I thought that was probably right up there. I think one that got a message thread between yourself and myself recently, James, was seeing Tino heading over to the USA after the the limited success of the other guys who have come over. That was certainly a surprising one. But I do want to mention outside of footy, I will never have a sporting injury story funnier than this. I reckon this trumps Warney saying that his mum gave him whatever, weight loss tablet. But the whole Yannick Sinner positive test situation where the physio put some cream on what was it? It was like a cut on the physio's hand. And then the physio did a massage on Yannick Sinner and touched a cut on Yannick Sinner with his cut and transferred enough cream. Oh man, it was just taken as gospel, and I'm like, what in the world? Like that is the
great story. Great yarns.
That is Cook Cactus. That's out there. I don't want to say too much in case Yannick listens to the pod and we lose a fan. But Simo, over to you, mate. What did you think from your position was one of the crazier injury stories of the year?
Oh mate, nothing that can touch on that. Yannick Sinner needs the magic sponge for those cuts. Sort him out real good. Look, my injury story of the year would have to be Tommy Gilbert. Like, just as someone that just sort of follows you on Twitter, Brien, and sort of where, just as a casual fan, most of us get all our info from. But as soon as we sort of see the word blood clot come up on the feed, your ears prick up and go, hey, what's going on here? And just the backstory behind that of coming over on the plane too early, essentially, and delaying the surgery for the ACL and all this sort of stuff. It's something that just, even as a casual fan, you go, how do they stuff this up? How does this happen? Which I probably will throw back to you for is like, what do we need to know about that? Like, it seems so weird that someone in this day and age playing in the NRL with physios at hand, doctors at hand, can get a blood clot that delays its surgery. I think it's craziness.
Yeah, mate, it's probably as equal parts bad luck as anything. Like there probably is. I mean, God, the comments. I don't have to moderate comments very often, except when I put the word blood clot or the term blood clot in anything with all the lovely vaccination comments that I get in there, which is always fun. But yeah, it's just one of those things. I think. Yeah, look, you do rarely see guys jump on an international flight, even though it is just NZ so soon after. So there's that component, but there is the luck. I think I might be talking out of turn, but I'm pretty sure there was something where Tommy Gilbert said like he fell asleep on the plane or something like that, and effectively like just didn't move for the entire 4 hours. And then kind of got up at the end of it. And that's probably the biggest, like, no. Like, on any flight, but anybody who's at an increased risk, you kind of want to, want to be moving. I say to my patients, you want to be the weird person who walks up and down the aisle like 4 or 5 times in the flight. That's who I want you to be on this flight.
Makes sense.
Yeah. 100%. James, what do you got for your nom?
Oh, and this is a reflection from when we spoke at the start of the year. So I think we talked about it in round 2, Taumalolo. It was published that he was dealing with a degenerative knee issue. So there was no heads up about this at the off season. There was no pre-warning about this. But what we should have realised, Brien, is we had video of Jordan McLean and Taumalolo on bikes doing Castle Hill. So the Cowboys do the Castle Hill run and they get flogged up and down the hill and off season to get fit. Those two boys are on bikes. That was a big alarm bell that the knees and ankles and hips are probably not in such a good place. So what did I do? I selected Taumalolo in my standard setups, and he pumped out 22 minutes in week 1, and I had to trade him out by week 2 because basically it was revealed that he was dealing with this issue with his knees. It was going to severely limit his minutes, really forever moving forward, aren't they? Like, he's going to have the odd week here or there, but that makes him completely unreliable. So yeah, Todd Payton really stitched me up there. So it wasn't crazy as in it's unheard of, but it was just the timing of it. I remember just being like, God damn, like Todd Payton's really just dicked me here real bad.
Oh mate, I remember because I did the post about him having the degenerative thing, and someone commented, "Oh, that's why he was on the bike." And I was like, what are you talking about? And then, as you say, you go and watch it and you're like, oh my God, like, how did we
I
miss
know.
that? Like, he was on a
I know.
bike.
That's
Oh,
why we're
man.
amateur
Yeah.
physios, Brian. We should have been better on that. So
Oh,
that's
mate.
another takeaway for 2025. If you see boys on bikes in off seasons, steer clear for SuperCoach would be the other one. All right, that's me just punishing myself there, just on reflection, Brian. But good to laugh about these things in hindsight. It wasn't much fun at the time. Next one is most influential injury, Brian. Who'd you have for this category?
Mate, I have to go with Adam Reynolds. The Bronx just sucked without him. I don't know how else to put it. I'm really sorry to say that to you. I think there was obviously a bit of self-induced coaching, in impacts there. But yeah, I just feel like as soon as Reynolds went down, the Bronx just did not handle those 3 months very well at all. And I thought it was pretty influential. You compare it to and I know they're the best team in the comp, but like a Penrith or even a Melbourne, for example, and the Broncos, when I say they're the best team in the comp, like the Penrith and Melbourne, but the Broncos from the year they had previously, like they deserve to be spoken about in those circles, right? Like I don't think it's unreasonable to sort of be like, well, we saw Cameron Munster out for half the year and Melbourne didn't miss a beat. You saw, Penrith have their injury struggles and they didn't miss a beat. It just seemed like for me that when Reynolds went down, the Bronx just didn't have an answer to it. I think if for as good as Ezra Mam is, that as soon as they just lost that general steering them around, it really struck them. I might throw straight to you, James, and then you can throw to Simo because I mean you're the Bronx fan, but hit me with your thoughts on the Reynolds injury, and then give us your most influential injury for the year.
I think it was Reynolds, but it was coupled with a few other big ones. I think you had sort of Reece Walsh at the time was in and out, Payne Haas was in and out. There was coaching conundrums there, and then the heat was just on, and they couldn't really get back. They were sort of drowning, and they couldn't find their way out, could they? So it was a bit of a lost season for the Bronx there. I do take your point about like other teams did it better because they did. They were just I don't know if it was depth of squad. I don't know if it was just fitting guys into roles, whether that's coaching as well. Maybe that is. I don't know, but yeah, it was a bit of a write off for us. The two I had here were Kalen Ponga and Tommy Turbo. Just as soon as those guys miss time, it really impacts their teams, and I just wonder if we had both of them at full season and they were full health in the finals, would they finish higher than they did? I think they probably would. So I think hoping for next year for full health for those guys for full season because it's been really disjointed for them for a few years. So that's what I'd like to see for next year. But I thought those were big influential injuries. Simon, one of my favourites there on the list. Who have you got for us?
Yeah, would be a bit remiss of me to not mention Sammy Walker here, boys, as James and I harp on about every single podcast we do. But I don't know. It's just I think with Sammy Walker and Brandon Smith as well, given the fact that it was the same game, it just I don't know. I'm not to say the Roosters would beat Melbourne or beat Penrith with those guys because obviously the record's pretty well documented on how poor it is against those elite teams. But I just feel like as soon as those guys went down, and Sammy Walker in particular, as soon as he was injured, I feel like it just became a more of a two-horse race for the comp. Like the Sharks, I guess they probably had a reasonable shot at the stumps, but I think most people, when that happened, just thought, right, the Roosters are done. Sharks maybe, but it sort of just made the finals just that little bit more predictable with Sammy Walker not there, given that the Roosters pretty much weren't going to fire a shot from that point forward. So I think just from a watchability index, we'll bring it out again. But yeah, just the way that it kind of, in my opinion, just sort of made the finals that little bit more mundane was a bit of a shame, and just sucks for Sammy Walker as well. Obviously, having to rehab that troublesome knee.
100%, mate. All right, well, we can move on to the next one there, Simo. I'll just jumped in. Sorry, Brian, we're going to go to the best NRL Physio social interaction of the year. So I'm going to pass it over to you straight out of the gate. What was your favourite interaction that you had this year?
Yeah, mate, I don't think.
Honest, let's go funniest, even.
Yeah, I don't even think there's. I think I've gotten more tamer, or my interactions have gotten more tamer. Because I remember in past years when we've done this, there's been so many so many to talk about. A couple of personal favourites for me was the guy who got up me for not posting about Little's wife, Jacob Little's wife, going into labour. That was definitely a personal favourite. And then the other one, which I had a lot of fun and probably the most interaction that I had with everyone and a bit of a G up, was the guy who, like, for whatever reason, decided to like tweet at me being like, I met the most beautiful girl ever last night at the game, and the only two things I know about her is that she's a Manly fan and that she follows you on Instagram. So can you I didn't get her number. I was a coward. Like, hook me up. And like that, I put that out on, Instagram, Twitter, and all that kind of stuff. And it was so funny. Like, people were so invested, which is, yeah, you love that kind of stuff, which is good. But I think the clear, funniest one for the year was, old Fear Factor Munger from Hoops on Fox. I think that got a good laugh from everyone. And and even the best thing ever was just Ivan. I don't know. Ivan might have even been taking the piss, but for Ivan to drop it was like 2 weeks later, to drop it was a ticking time bomb as well. Fuck, I lost it. I was like, that's funny as. So yeah, that was that whole interaction was pretty good. I mean, yeah, Simo, I'll throw to you, but I don't expect you to follow my interactions as closely, but I'm sure the old James Hooper one probably was one of the better ones this year.
Oh, the James Hooper on 360 was pure gold, just absolute gold. Like, just the whole setup, Braith's reaction, Bulldog Richie. It was just unreal. Like, it was hard to really read the room the first. I had to actually go back and rewatch it just to go like, who's being legit here? Who's having a land of you? Are they giving you a compliment? Because I don't know at this point. Like, it was okay. Any publicity is good publicity, so we'll leave it at that. I'm sure you've got good thoughts on it too, James. It was just unreal.
Yeah, it's all the same. I don't think we need to comment on it too much more, but my favourite bit was when Braith sort of was chiming in at the end, and I think Braith was sort of trying to pump himself up indirectly by pumping Brien down, and that was really funny to me. I think I must have messaged that to Brien about 50 separate times just to bring him back down a notch whenever I needed to just clip the wings there a little bit. So that was good by Braith. I really quite enjoyed that. We're going to move on to the next category here, boys. So we've got Buy the Year. This is a pretty unanimous decision, Brien. Stephen Crichton across the board here. What do you want to talk to about Stephen Crichton?
Yeah, mate. I mean, I can't say much more than has already been said. I won't go on too long about it. Yeah, he's just immense. Like, I think the Doggies as a whole were the overachievers of the year in terms of like what everyone expected in the preseason. And yeah, Stephen Crichton was the guy behind that. You can see the difference that he's made off the field as well as on the field too. Obviously pushing the standards and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I'll throw to you boys or throw to you, Simon. But yeah, I think like Crichton was just amazing.
Yeah, it's him by the length of the straight, really. And I think what really is a testament to him, it's like if you'd said back at the start of the year that the Bulldogs are going to have a monumental turnaround, Crichton would be by the year by the length of the straight, like what would have to happen for that to be the case? And the fact that he's done this without having to move to fullback and staying at right centre, I just think it's just insane. Like, in SuperCoach wise, he didn't really set the world alight, but just from a real life standpoint, those intangibles and things that he can bring just outside the game of footy, both on the field and off, I think it's just incredible. And testament to Stephen Crichton that we're saying this here, that it's just a fait accompli, just a great year.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. He's pretty special in Origin as well. So I think that even the impact he had on neutralising Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow when he got moved to right centre after game one for game two, that was still a great matchup, but we just lacked that point of difference, didn't we, from a backline perspective? So I thought that was big. Rookie of the Year is also a unanimous one as well, and I think this is very well deserved for a guy who played unbelievable footy in a badly beaten team pretty much week in and week out. Brien, Lockie Galvin's the man. What a season. Like, my goodness, he had a good year.
Yeah, mate, like insane. He was someone who I kind of got around probably mostly in SuperCoach to start with, but it like shows you how I got on him in Classic because of his price and all that kind of stuff, but I don't think I owned him anywhere in draft. Like I just didn't. I was like, it's not going to last. Like he's playing for the Tigers. He's a bit wiry. He's young. They're talking about, he's going to get rests and stuff like that. And he just he just went, because Benji spoke about giving him a rest, was like, yeah, like he's going to need a rest at some point. It was just his form, said no. He played through, I think it was a broken wrist of memory. That's my off-season brain. But, played through, injury, stuff like that. So, yeah, Galvin easily for me. Simo, you're the same?
Yeah, easily. It's a little bit sad that he couldn't win Rookie of the Year just because of the suspension for the Dally M's. So, I mean, Jack
much more
Bostock was
prestigious the Magic Sponge Awards, and we don't discriminate for that. So I'm sure he'll be glad.
He'll be on cloud 9, absolutely. So he should be.
Absolutely.
Nah,
Yeah,
good year, really good year from the kid. Like, I think just to sort of elaborate on what you said about him being a bit wiry, like just the fact that Benji let him play his game, like he was no stranger to throwing a few balls over the sideline or having a few Barry Crockers in there. I know there was one try of a kick that he kicked off his shin and led to a try. Like that's the sort of player that he is. And, he might have 100 shots, but he was hitting, 75, 80% of them. So, yeah, to have that sort of gunslinger mentality in such a young kid and the coach letting him do that, I think it was really good to see. And breath of fresh air for casual fans just wanting to see the Tigers finally have some promise. So good signs going into next year.
Couldn't agree more, Simo. The only ones I made mention was I thought Maxi Plath had a great year, Brian. What a find he was for the Dolphins. And he's not a rookie, but I just feel like he's worth mentioning here about like the myth of Jack Howarth. I mean, how many years have we spoken about Jack Howarth for? And all of a sudden he's sort of like starting at center and we're like, oh yeah, he's going all right. But my God, his end of season performances were exceptional. I'm just like, mate, he's going to wear maroon next year. He's going to wear maroon for Queensland next year if
And
he keeps up this vein of
he
form.
has chosen Queensland over. He could have played for NZ at the end of the year, but he's got
Yeah,
Queensland
I do
spirit,
know
mate.
he's eligible both. Yeah, that's right. Well, good product out of Brisbane there. I think he went to one of the elite private schools there, I think. So he would have had a bit of rah-rah under his belt before coming to the more superior game, obviously. But yeah, I just saw Jack Howarth at the end of the year, man. Not a rookie, but he sort of feels like a rookie because he's had like one game here and one game there. And this is the year it's been like, okay, he's figured it out. And Bellamy just looks like he's done it again. He's like kept this guy playing for the Falcons for like 2.5 years, it feels like. And then all of a sudden, when he puts him on the big stage, he's like, yep, he's good. We'll move Remus Smith on. Like, we're all in with Jack Howarth there. So I don't know if he's going to play centre or edge next year, but he's probably in consideration for me as like a guy you got to have at centre wing almost. Like, he was that good towards the end of the year. My God, like just post contacts, tackle breaks, line assists, he was everywhere. So I thought he was exceptional. Most improved this year. I've sort of spoken about Jack Howarth there quite highly, Brian, but we're going to talk more in depth about most improved. Who did you like this year as most improved? Big name to start.
Yeah, mate. I think this is a guy who's gone like people always thought that Zach Lomax had talent, right? Like he was always a guy who he was highly touted. And so maybe it's, we've got some guys who went from nothing to something and Zach Lomax already was something. But like yeah, I mean, no disrespect to Brian Toto, but I reckon Zach Lomax was the best winger in the game this year. Like, I just thought he was insane playing for the Dragons. Origin, he was immense. He's gone and played for Australia. He was really good there as well. Yeah, I mean, what did all the stats or whatever the thing was where he was the 20-something best center, like, at the start of the year or the Dragon stats had him as that or something like that. But you wouldn't have said he was in the top 5 centers in the game from performance, maybe on potential, but not on performance. And he's gone to the wing and just, yeah, if he's wasn't number 1 this year, he was number 2. And yeah, I just thought he was crazy. So that's my, I just thought he was awesome. Simo, you've got a good, like, I thought this guy, mate, I'd love to see this guy in the 100-meter sprint on grand final day if it ever happens, because he looks rapid.
Yeah, my guy's KO Weeks for the Raiders, and he was so highly touted at Manly before he went to Canberra this year, and one of those guys that just as a rugby league public, we just wrote off way too soon. It seems like filled in a couple of games for Manly at fullback when Turbo was injured. I know one of them was against Penrith at Penrith, which he just had a shocking game. I think the next time he played, he might have come off the bench, played a bit of halves here and there. I assume filling in for Schuster a little bit, but I just look at him this year and go, like, the talent of this guy, like that speed is just uncoachable. And just when you think about the distance traveled in terms of most improved player, like this guy was just essentially just written off as a reserve grade caliber player, whereas now he's just an out and out NRL gun. So one of those guys that you're going to be really excited going into 2025 just to sort of see what he's going to do. This is because you assume now he's going to lock down the fullback spot there for at least a little bit longer. One of those guys that you really root for. I'm really big on these guys that sort of have big props coming through, have a few setbacks, and then turn it all around. So, yeah, I mean, Kyle Weeks just announced himself as just probably one of the best guys to watch getting around. So usually I don't say that about the Raiders, but it gave you a reason to switch them on at home, that's for sure. James, what do you got there for your most improved, mate?
Yeah, I sort of bundled a few in here. So I thought Terrell May and Herbie Farnworth. Like, I know Herbie sort of had a great year for the Bronx last year, but far out he was good for the Finns this year, Brian. Like, you were watching him week in, week out. And Terrell May as well. Like, I just thought for front row, for a guy that hasn't played a lot of first grade to play big minutes and handle himself. I know there's scuttle with him moving on this offseason. I don't know why, because he's such an exceptionally talented player. I could probably guess as to why, but I won't say that here. But I just thought he was unbelievable. He was in sort of the breath of like maybe he gets picked for Origin as well. And this is a guy that I was like, oh, okay, he's going to be in that middle rotation for the Roosters. Didn't think that much of it, but he was exceptional. And the other one I thought was pretty wild is when you look at SuperCoach, Jacob Little finished with the most points from hooker. Most overall points from hooker. He played 2 less games than Harry Grant. I'll just say that, whispering that quietly, because that doesn't fit my narrative. But he scored more total points than Harry Grant this year, which when you think about that, ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like 2 less games, granted. Like, yep, I'll have my cake and eat it too there. But I just thought the fact that he scored more overall points, I had to do a double take on my phone about 4 or 5 times. I could not quite believe it. I knew he went hot to the end of the year and he had a great season, but man, oh man, Supercoach Jacob Liddell outscoring Harry Grant in 2 less games. I thought that was ridiculous. That was unbelievable. What about in the same vein here, Brian? We're sort of gone from an overperform there at Supercoach to underperformer of the year. Who did you have injury-wise or Supercoach-wise as your underperformer of 2024?
Yeah, mate, to balance out 2 of my buys of the year, Max King and Jacob Kiraz being in my best calls of the year, I'll bring myself back down to earth with my third injury by the year, which is Sean Lane. I just thought he was a bit to your point about Siwa Wong and Brendan Piakura, Simo, like not falling for those mid-range, like second rowers. Sean Lane was it was almost one of those things where he wasn't bad enough where you just like, oh, I have to drop him. And that was almost the worst thing. Like it wasn't like he was still playing big minutes. And so you're like, surely it's going to come soon. Like I'll keep starting him. Surely it has to happen. Mate, he was just bog average. And it just didn't go well. The other one for me was Mo Fotuaika. I thought once Tino went down, I don't think going into the year anyone was necessarily super high on him maybe. But for me, like when Tino went down, I was like, oh man, Mofo, he should be playing 60, 65 minutes. He could average 60 to 65 with that kind of opportunity. And just, from a SuperCoach perspective, he was, not great. I thought he had less impact this year than last year from both a SuperCoach and from a real life perspective. So he was one who was a bit of a letdown for me. Simo, I thought this was a bit left field, but once you posted it, I was like, oh yeah, actually that's a good one.
Yeah, I definitely have gone a bit left field. I think I could just summarize it by saying Knights 5'8". in this spot. Like Tyson Gamble, we know is not really the answer, but Jack Cogger coming back to Newcastle after showing promise at Penrith. You assume that going back to Newcastle, they had big plans for him to hopefully either take over the 7 or be a good foil outside Jackson Hastings. Just that whole halves combo was just a dumpster fire all year. They were chopping and changing every week. They had Will Price come in for a few weeks, got rid of him. They'd play Gamble on the bench, and then he'd come on halfway through. Cogger would play some 6. He'd play one game at 7. Then he was back to Reggie's. It's probably not as much just on Jack Cogger, but just the whole Newcastle 5'8" position. For mine, it was just one of those underperforming spots that I think probably ended up costing the Knights a realistic shot of bigger honours this year. Obviously, the Ponga injury is never going to be good either, but yeah, just for what Cogger would have been hoping to come back to at Newcastle, I just don't think it ever gained any traction, which is a bit of a shame for them, albeit not an out-and-out superstar, but yeah, just didn't have the growth or any growth at all, unfortunately for him. James, your guy we've talked about a little bit, but why not? Let's give him some more props because he deserves it.
Yeah, a little bit of a pump up here because Crichton was so good in real life, and I took heaps of him in draft and didn't really light it up in SuperCoach, which was, yeah, it was a little bit surprising because I was banking on him getting fullback, as you mentioned earlier. The other one, though, was Corey Horsburgh. What a bloody big drop-off he had, where he was Origin Game 3, 2023, playing big minutes for the Green Machine and playing really well, and he barely made out reserve grade all year. So I don't know what happened there. There was whispers of him moving on. There was whispers of him and Ricky not talking, and now they're happy families again. I don't know what happened. Like, he sort of got his spot back towards the end of the year, but I really expect a much, much better year for Corey Horsburgh next year. I think especially, Josh Papali's 1 year older. I guess Tarpanay's 1 year older. Maybe Corey Horsburgh steps up into bigger minutes there. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, that's for sure, about Corey Horsburgh. What'd you make of Corey Horsburgh, Simo? Like, how did he fall out of favour there with Rick? Did he just not give him a birthday present, or I couldn't figure it out?
Brien knows my story with Corey Horsburgh because I was so big on him going into this year. I just thought, like, he was suspended to start the year, obviously, and he missed the first 3 games to a month, maybe. So he was a pretty good value in SuperCoach drafts because for what he was doing in the big minute games he was getting playing lock, there was a lot to see and a lot to like in Corey Horsburgh. But obviously when he did come back, he made a few errors. I think he got injured pretty badly, did his groin, I think, in one of those games that he came back, and then he was back in Reggie's pretty much the rest of the year. I think there was some sort of falling out between him and Ricky in that time frame. Obviously, when he did come back, he played essentially as a bench front rower, and Morgan Smithies had taken his spot pretty well, which is, a debate for another day. But I think there's just a lot of things that factored into Corey Horsburgh's year, just nosediving right from the get-go, from the suspension to the injury to Morgan Smithies to Ricky Stewart. Yeah, it was just a shocking year. And I'm glad you mentioned him because he was one of those guys that I've deliberately tried to clear of my mind because I was so big on him. But yeah, he was so bad this year.
Mate, couldn't agree. So we're going to go on to our favourite segment of the season when we wrap this up. So this is coaching bedshit of the season, Brien. We talk about this nearly weekly, and I love talking about it because, man, rugby league just delivers week after week after week. What was your coaching bedshit of the year, Brien? Tell me what yours was.
Mate, this is another one of those things where, like, I feel like the one that you've chosen, James, it leaves all the others for dead. Did we talk about Batten, Donald Bradman? Like we could have. I think we did whole podcasts on what you're going to choose this year. We're supposed to be an injury podcast, and we spent most of our time talking about that coaching bed shit. But I'll just give my 2 little ones. I thought Ben Hornby's handling of the Latrell, ruling him out for the year, like that whole situation, I was like, that was just embarrassing at the time. And it wasn't just Hornby, the NRL. We spoke about how the NRL doing that whole, like, imposing the ban, but only when he's fit. kind of situation was like made the whole thing embarrassing as well. So it's not just Hornby, but yeah, I just thought there was some real bad decisions made there. But my one is, mate, I'll call out the mighty Dolphins not offering Val Meninga a contract for next year. He's going to go back, mate. I think I don't know whether I spoke about it on the pod. I swear I spoke to you about it. I saw someone somewhere, and I apologize whoever's told me this, but it was like one of those friend of friend situations where they're like, "Oh, I know Val's best mate," or something like that, and they effectively told me like Val was absolutely devastated and like just was heartbroken and was just going to go back and play like club rugby in NZ, and that just breaks my heart. It literally breaks my heart. I was like, man, like if I knew the Finns weren't offering him a contract because he didn't like it there and he wanted to go elsewhere, I'd be like, oh, it'd suck, but it wouldn't. But yeah, I just don't know. I like surely there's another guy. Like there's not another guy who doesn't deserve that, 30th spot on the roster for the talent that old Val has, because I mean, probably there's stuff behind the scenes in terms of like training and stuff like that, but yeah, I'm going to nominate Val not getting a contract. That's a coaching bedshit in my eyes, my very biased Val loving eyes. Simo, what have you got before we talk about the pinnacle with James?
Yeah, I'll make mine quick because James's is very, very good. Look, mine was just back in round 9, round 10, when Des Hasler named 3 hookers in his team. Aaron Clark at 9, Chris Randall at 7, Sam Verrills at 6. Like, just going back to that day, reading that team list, if you'd have recording on my face, it was just in like, what the actual is going on here? Because surely he's not going to run out like that. And to his credit, look, he did bring Tommy Weaver in and played 7, but like they still had Chris Randall playing 6 that game, and Verrills got dropping back to play hooker. It was just one of those Des Hasler. I'm going to call it masterstroke, but or dead shit, whichever way you want to look at it. Bed shit. Yeah, typical Des, and I'm kind of here for it, but at the same token, it's definitely warrants bed shit material. That's for sure. Alrighty, James, the floor is yours. This one here is a very good one.
Yeah, you just jogged my memory there when you mentioned Tom Weaver, Simo. I think Brien, he played his debut with a broken forearm, didn't he?
Yeah, so that was why they named or part of it was that he had to prove his fitness from a broken something.
So that's one I just forgot to the annals of time on like probably toughest injury performance, but 18 broken forearm playing first grade. I mean, pretty good from Tommy Weaver. Anyway, I'll own up to myself being a dumb fuck coach this year, to be honest, boys, by trading Tommy Talau out at round 8 in standard for 335 when he maxed out at 700k. So that's me owning my bedsheet decisions there. So I've had to do a lot of washing to wash the shit out of my own bed sheets about that one. But in the NRL, I've said it's the tale of 2 Billies. So the first one was Billy Slater, the non-selection of David Fifita, and he picked Felice Kafusi in game 2 and game 3, where he played 10 minutes in game 2 and 16 minutes in game 3. So this has been spoken about a lot, but I think when you look at it overall, when you think far out, we're picking Kafusi for 10 minutes and 16 minutes, and we're not selecting someone like that. Serious questions got to be answered about that. I don't know how you can possibly justify it. That was an absolute bed shit. And honestly, Madge Maguire just picked the team that he sort of had to pick, and New South Wales pretty comfortably, well, they dusted us in game 2. And they sort of were in control for most of game 3 as well. So I think Billy's got to have a look at the selections there, in my opinion. But then the other one was Billy Walters, constantly picking his son at 9 when we've got better hooking options. We've got Tyson Smoothie, Corey Pakes, and Blake Moser. I think that selection and that continuation of going back to Billy probably, eroded the playing group and led to Kevy getting his job sort of dismissed. I think that sort of undid everything there at the Broncos. So I think I think the Billy Slater selection and then the Billy Walters selection were probably the two biggest coaching bedshits that I could sort of sum up for 2024 there, Brian. Is there anything I missed out from, I guess, the Kevy and Billy respectively there? We've talked about them ad nauseum on the podcast. They probably have a standing agenda item in our run sheet every week. Hopefully we can put that to bed next year and move on to better things, hey?
Mate, I reckon if we cut up the amount of time that we spent on those two topics this
Hours.
year, it would be, there'd be
Probably
a
a
super
day.
cut. Yeah, it would be a long time. It'd probably rival the amount of time we talk about injuries, I reckon. It'd be almost close to even because they were, the main one for me was the Billy Slater in Origin. And we'll talk about, we're about to go to coaching masterstroke, which ties in there with me as well. But
Yeah, you keep going, mate. Just go straight into
I'll
coaching
go straight
masterstroke
into
while
it.
we're there.
So,
Yeah, go straight in.
like coaching masterstroke for me is Madge in Origin, and look, Billy helped him well and truly by shitting the bed with at the selection table, I think, and not only that, it was just the continuous with Billy, like the continuous just smoke and mirrors bullshit about like why he didn't pick him. It was like, all these unmeasurables of like he doesn't do this or he doesn't do that, but then people, it reminds me of like that American politics stuff where their politicians will say something and then someone with stats will come out and be like, well, no, that's just not true. And like Dave Fafita, it would come out, he doesn't do this or he doesn't do that, and then someone would come out on Twitter or something with a tweet and compare Felice Kafusi, Kurt Capewell, and Dave Fafita. And Dave Fafita was outperforming those two blokes in all of these areas that Billy had just said. It's a bit like the what was it? The Olivia Koenig not getting picked, and the coach saying like, she played off the bench in Origin when she was named, stuff like that. I'm like that, yeah. So the Billy one was the one that I thought of, but yeah, I just thought for coaching masterstroke, Madge, look, you could say Billy helped him a lot and he picked the team, as you said, James, he just picked the team that he needed to, but like he had to do it without Cleary, without Latrell, without Turbo, and away from home. He's down 1-0. He comes, like, it pains me to talk about it, but yeah, like he killed it. He did exactly what needed to be done. It was something that, Freddie couldn't do in those latter years. Like he seemed to lose that way to do it. And Madge came in and he nailed it. So yeah, I thought that was the big one for me. My homer pick is Wayne, going with Max Plath at 13. I think Wayne made some questionable decisions this year, but yeah, going with Max Plath at 13 was a great call. And I think, look, even if Tommy Gilbert's back next year, I think Plath's almost done enough to say Tommy Gilbert start at edge or start even as a bench prop or something like that, or a bench 13, especially coming off like 2 years out of the game nearly with Gilbert. So yeah, Maxi Plathy looks real good. Simo, yours, I mean, we spoke about Lomax earlier, but yeah, I think this is a really interesting component of it, of the Lomax situation. Your nomination here.
Yeah, exactly. When we talk about coaching masterstrokes, like what Shane Flanagan's done there to come out and essentially call out one of the top 3 players at the Dragons and just go, look, you're not doing it well playing center. You're 24th ranked at the start of the year. This is where your stats are. This is where I see you. I'm moving you to the wing. Obviously, the ensuing blow up from Lomax that's come from that and him having to move there. Like, just the whole scenario about how right Shane Flanagan has proven to be from that moment forward is just, I mean, it would even shock Zach Lomax, surely. Like, there's no way anyone could have seen that coming. And but credit to Lomax for the way that he's played in amongst all that sort of adversity, with him being so vocal that he wants to play center. But like, it's almost at the point where I just don't see a world where Lomax couldn't be regretting being so vocal about it and making it play out the way that he did. Like, I know he's been asked by a few journos, does he regret going to Parramatta and whatnot? But I mean, I don't think he regrets going to Parramatta, but the fact that he's going there to not play wing, and after the year that he's had, being essentially the game's best winger, now wearing an Australian number 5 jersey in the Pac Championships, like, just an insanely good call by Shane Flanagan. And at the time, like I questioned it. I'm sure many people questioned it. Obviously, Zach Lomax questioned it. But man, oh man, he couldn't have been more right. And just a career year for Lomax. And I don't think Shane Flanagan gets enough props for just how bloody good a call that was, coaching wise. So for me, that's a pretty easy one. Well done to Shane Flanagan there. Over to you there, James. What have you got for your coaching masterstroke of 2024?
Look, so I went to the NRLW for my inspiration here. So because I love Queenslanders who wear 9 and win clutch games for our state, I went with Lauren Brown when she got picked at 9 for game 2. So she obviously kicked that field goal in the very last minute of the game 2. Queensland went behind that whole game. So we were down 1-0. So if we lose that game, lose the series. So she wins the game in game 2. Then she plays at 9 again for game 3 and is absolutely lights out in that game. So whatever inspiration there was there, I think Lauren Brown routinely plays 7 and 6, I think, for the Titans is probably where she's a bit more familiar. So the fact she got picked at 9, just an immense sense of safety. Like when you see a Queensland Maroons wearing 9 and you're like, okay, they're a gun. We're going to win here. It was like Cam Smith playing there for 14 years. There's just no better feeling. You see him run out on the field, you're like, yeah, we're probably going to win this. You know, like that's Cam just doing his thing. That's going to be good for us. But the other one, low key for the NRLW, Brien, I'm going to flick to you here, was who got Semi Bremner out of retirement? Because she just came back and won a comp, and it was just like, oh yeah, I just had a third kid like 10 months ago. I'll just come back to the Roosters and we'll just win another comp, and that'll be that. Like that is underrated. So whoever twisted Semi Bremner's arm gets the coaching masterstroke. I don't know if it's coach. I don't know if it's manager. I don't know if it's just the girls getting around her. Was it just the girls at the Roosters just hyping her up? I don't know. Whoever got her there though, good play. Real good play.
I'd love to know if it was on the cards just because Corbin Baxter did her ACL or not. Like, was it something that was already in the background, or was it Corbin Baxter went down like, let's get on Sammy? Because yeah, there's a really cool story there. So I hope somebody tells it at some point, because yeah, I totally agree with you. Amazing.
Yeah, love it, mate. What do you got for this one?
Mate, biggest brain explosion of the year has to be Tane Milne for me. 10 seconds to go. I mean, this is a guy who is the king of brain explosions. Don't get me wrong. The guy, you could go through a lot, but I still think it's the dirtiest play that I saw this year. And maybe I'm forgetting some, so I apologize to the other dirtbags in the NRL that I might be missing. But like the 10 seconds to go, Tane Milne, I can't remember who it was, but it was standing upright in the tackle. Effectively, they're 10 seconds to go. They're doing the whole thing where they're just like hugging each other and waiting for the clock to run down. And he just cannonballs the shit out of his knees. It was the dirtiest thing. And the NRL only gave him 2 weeks. And I just think for all the stuff, like you see those, people, whenever a guy gets rubbed out for a nasty, like head high tackle that might not have been purposeful. And they say, oh, you have to judge on intent. Like he should have got 6 weeks. It was, shit house. Hated it. Biggest brain explosion of the year. Simo, what do you got for me? This is a good one, actually.
Oh, yeah. This guy's no stranger to intent and suspensions, that's for sure. Jared Weir-Hargreaves, like, I could pick about 5 or 10 moments. Like, just any moment of he was on the field this year, I could have almost picked for this. But the one that stands out to me is, the big hype between JWH, Roosters, all-time games, record breaker, runs out with the gold number 8 jersey on. His family's there. It's such a big occasion, and then in the first 5 minutes, just head high, sent off, sent to the sin bin. Cops 4 week suspension for it. Just, I don't know. The guy just can't help himself, and just to come out then, like I know Gordon Tallis was talking a lot in the media about it afterwards, saying that we're going to lose these enforcers in the game and that sort of stuff because of this. Like we need these guys in the game. It's just like, wake up and smell the roses, mate. This is 2024. Like, you can't be hitting guys the way that Jared keeps hitting them and just not learn from it. And he's just never learned. And I don't think he will ever learn. And just to be on his biggest day, arguably as a Roos Day outside of grand finals, I just thought it summed him up perfectly. And, you know, I have had respect for Jared, but you got to also know the guy's weaknesses. And unfortunately, this was an absolute shit the bed moment from JWH. So unfortunately, or in this case, brain explosion, unfortunately for him. So just another 4-week suspension to go along with his season's worth that he's had in his career up to this point. James, over to you. We sort of touched on Olivia Koenig a minute ago, but we might just go into a bit more detail about that sort of brain explosion by the coach there.
Yeah, probably don't need too much more chat here, but I just thought when the coach came out who picked the Australian women's team and said, we're not going to pick Koenig because she didn't start for New South Wales, even though she got picked in the 15, but she started all 3 games. Like, that was an absolute brain explosion. The blowback from that has been immense, and probably rightly so. Like, she's quite clearly the best player in the game. Like, I think that's one award that really correlates really closely to how well someone goes is, like, you know, the player of the season for NRLW, it's a forward or it's back, it's whoever, but it normally correlates with the best player. I thought her not getting a jersey for the end of the season was like it was a brain explosion. Like, what the hell were they thinking not selecting her somewhere in the starting 17? She's in every best squad you could ever possibly pick. So I thought that was absolutely bizarro. So that's why that was my nomination there. Brien, who was your best super coach trade in this year? That's the next category. You had a few good ones this year, mate, because you finished a lot higher up the ladder than me. So a few to choose from there for you.
Yeah, mate. Going through my trades, you look at it, and there weren't too many like standout, like, you know, ones that I did against the grain, which probably, yeah, leans towards my thing of, you know, like the frustration with Classic is that there's so many of the same, especially with as wonderful as content creators are now. Like, it definitely does push a lot of us to similar kind of decisions. But my round 7 trades, I brought in Crichton at 400k and KL at 200k. That was by far my best week. Like, bringing those 2 guys in, just rode them home the entire way. But I think my best one was bringing in Tyron Wishart at 350k, and just riding him for I squeezed every bit of juice out of him that I could, and I think I traded him literally at his peak price too. So bought him at his, you know, almost his cheapest, and sold him at the top. So yeah, I would say him as being my best one. Simo, what about you, mate?
Yeah, mate, good call on Wishart. He was unreal. He's
So
one that I
good.
certainly
He was
missed the
good.
boat on. So good call from you. Sort of similar to you, look, Kale Hero. I actually managed to start the year with Hero, so that certainly saved me a trade. I've had him in my team to start the year, the last couple. So this year just obviously panned out to be the right decision there. So I was pretty lucky. I probably couldn't really nail it down to one trade in particular. It's probably more just captaincy choices for me that sort of kept me in the top 200 sort of mid-season. Like, I just jagged a lot of the big scores getting around. I know I captained Drinkwater for his 144 in round 5. Hines 142 in round 7. Hines again 160 round 8. Hammer got 94 in round 11 for me. So yeah, just a couple of really good captaincy calls, more so than trade-ins. And that's obviously more than half the battle if you get your captaincy right, because it's pretty hard to go up the rankings too much without that. So I'd say that's probably the main thing that kept me afloat. Unfortunately, it didn't last, but faded late in the year. But that's certainly something that hopefully I can get right again next year. What about you there, James? What was your best Supercoach trade?
Yeah, so I think everyone got on Kaliro, Angus Crichton, Blaize Talagi, James Schiller, Joshi Curran, and Terrell May. So I didn't mention them, but mine was getting Kiraz in at round 7 at 603, which is really good for me for the rest of the year at centre wing. And he was in pod territory the whole time as well. I think he was always around 7 or 6% owned. So every time he went big, which was often, I was pretty happy about that in a pretty tough season for yours truly outside of him. So he was definitely my best trade in. What about your worst trade in, Brien? Who have you got here?
It just has to be Isaac Tungo. He was the worst. I hated him. I hated owning him. It just sucked. It sucked. I brought him in at round 8 at 700K effectively, or just a tick under. He'd averaged 71. I did all this research too, he's performed, because it was when Cleary was out, I think, or maybe Cleary was just coming back or something. But I'd done research and I'd found that, Tungo still performs well even when Cleary's not there. He takes on extra or something. I can't remember what I did, but I thought it was a genius idea. I had so many options in the CTW. I could have bought anyone really, and I wanted to go point of difference. And I'm like, everyone's going away from him because of this reason. I actually think they're wrong, and I was dead wrong. He sucked. He was so bad for the rest of the year. But and rivaling that, I mean, I said that I made the call in the preseason, but I traded out Kiraz in round 3, 603K, and never got him back. I think it was almost one of those things where he didn't light the world on fire in the first 3 weeks, and I was like, I've done it. I've screwed up another buy of the year call. I've just got to trade him out. So I've got him in 4 drafts or whatever I had him in. So I was happy that I was kind of hedging my bets and got rid of him and just never got him back. So yeah, that was a bad one from me. It's still Isaac Tungo. I hated him. Simo, what do you got? I think James and I were also guilty of this one too.
Yeah, Tungo's a good shout there too. I was sort of lucky in the regards that I didn't go that way, but my one is someone that I decided to hold for a while there. When Nico Hines scored 3 back in round 12, pretty much everyone was trading him on bulk at that point, because obviously the Origin period was coming up. The Sharks didn't have a great run. He killed the start of the year. I think he was averaging 80 for the first 11 rounds, and then the 3 came in there, stuffed with his rolling average and that sort of stuff. So there was heaps of people selling Nico at that point, and I just thought, no, this guy's a gun. I'm going to stick with Hines. Unfortunately for me, he pumped out, I think, only a 60 average in the next 3 games and really underwhelmed. And pretty much everyone who sold him, the thing that really got me was not so much that Hines was terrible, like 60's okay, but the fact that most sold to Jerome Hughes in that time, and he just absolutely killed it. And I never got Jerome Hughes in at that point. I just had the whole year essentially death rolling Jerome Hughes, and I just could never find a way to get him back, or to get him in. So yeah, that's probably one of the things that really derailed my year later on, that's for sure, because as we now know, Nico proceeded to get injured again later on and miss a big chunk of the year from that point. And then, yeah, Hughes obviously had a Dally M type year and put up great SuperCoach numbers as well. So definitely one of the ones that got away, or ones that I should have sold at that point. I'm head up and say I got that one wrong. What about you, James? What's your worst SC trade?
Lots this year to choose from, that's for sure. But I missed the boat completely on Teddy, Wishart, Val, Zach Lomax, and AFB. So I didn't have them at all this year. So that just sort of sums up how my season had gone. My biggest stuff up was trading Payne Haas into my team in round 2. And I think he got injured that week and missed the next 6. So he had that knee surgery that no one knows what actually happened. So I blew up my team to bring him in, and then I had to blow up my team to trade him out. So I basically burnt 6 trades to undo the carnage. And then on the other 2 that I traded in sub 500, I traded Isaac Tungo and DWZ in sub 500, and neither of them worked out for me. I thought, try to just catch fire here around round 16 bye week or something like that. And I did not catch fire. I caught a whole pile of garbage. So that was not a great selection from me. Brien, we're going to go to your favourite player for 2024. Who was your favourite player this year?
Yeah, I think Isaiah Katoa. When we signed him up, we being the Finns, has signed him up for, I think it's still the end of 2028 or something ridiculous. I just think each week that goes past, he just looks more and more like the best, young half in the comp or close to it. I just think he's amazing from a pure footy standpoint, I think, because I don't mean to steal this next guy off you, who I'll talk about from a watchability standpoint, James, but I think we all love the Hammer in one way or another. But yeah, I just think from a pure footy standpoint, I love seeing young halves have struggled a lot in recent years, and it's, comes with like Joey Johns coming out saying we're not developing halves well and all this kind of thing. And I just think Isaiah Katoa is just showing, yes, so much promise at such a young age. And the fact that we've got him locked down for a long time now, yeah, makes me sleep well at night. The Hammer one for watchability is huge. The one story I wanted to tell here, I won't go too long about Hammer because I know, James, that's yours, but I think somebody said earlier about like all the kids knowing like they know Hammer and that kind of thing. And both of my girls, I have 3 and 5-year-old girls, and the Kangaroos game was on the other day, and Ham scored, and mate, those 2 kids, like they were just playing. Like we were in their playroom, there's TV, had the TV on in the background because I wanted to keep up with the footy. And all of a sudden, both girls are like losing their minds. Hammer, like Hammer scored. And I'm like, that is so cool. Like that just makes me like, yeah, that feeling is really cool. And he's not even wearing a Dolphins jersey, but they still know who he is. They saw him do his thing like they're doing the Finn as well. Yeah, that's the fact that like a player can bring that to 2 girls who barely understand what footy is, but they know who Hammer is. Yeah, that's cool shit. Cool shit. I'll throw straight to you, James, because you're going to go on about the Hammer too. He's just he's awesome.
Yeah, just the highlights reel from this year alone. Like, what more do you say? Like, it's just the length of the field and the long range tries. It's just smooth as silk. It's incredibly skillful, deceptively strong. But yeah, just the amount of just big plays that he makes is it's hard to wrap your head around in a competition as good as the NRL, as defensively sound as some teams are. He just leaves some players and defensive structures looking absolutely silly. It's crazy, yeah, and he's scored 3 games in game 1. He was very good for Queensland. He was great in game 2 and game 3. I think he was nursing an AC joint in one of those games, but he was still really solid. The him and Crichton battle is going to be elite for the next few years. But yeah, Hamaso he's just special, mate. Like there's just something about him that's immensely special. Simo, I like your call here. I want to hear your in-depth call for AFB because his move to the Sharks next year is going to be super interesting, I reckon.
Yeah, I kind of touched on AFB earlier. And the reason why I had him as my favourite player is partially due to the fact that I called him a bust and probably made me notice him a bit more than I otherwise would have. But I think just like you guys, not having him in SuperCoach, both draft and classic, I don't know, this guy was just watching him every week, just killing teams. Like his size, his footwork. He's just one of the most all-round front rowers I've seen in quite some time. Like he's not as tall as Haas and probably doesn't have quite the motor, but for the guy the size of AFB, he can pump out so many minutes. Like he can play 66 minutes if he has to, and has done quite a bit for the Warriors. He's just the ability to just play eyes up footy, like that late footwork at the line, offload. He can actually hit it line himself. I love when they play him wide of the ruck and just get him one-on-one with small halves and just essentially run him as an edge in attack. And he's just so bloody dangerous. And for me, like watching AFB play for Tonga the other day and sort of what he did, not only against Australia in the final, but also just in the pool games as well. Like he would not be out of place if he won the Golden Boot when it's announced, I think, next week. So, yeah, just one of those guys that I think next year, hopefully his game doesn't change too much at the Sharks because he's just a player that I just respect so much for what he can do. I just love big guys that have this skill, and it's just so rare. And for me, yeah, AFB, get around him. Had a great year.
Really nice one, mate. All right, we're going to culminate the evening. We've been on for a while, but I guess the big award here, which is the Golden Sponge for the Player of the Year 2024. Brien, who was your Player of the Year? Who would you give the Golden Sponge to this year, mate?
Mate, I'll have to go, and I know this is boring because he won the Dally M, but Jerome Hughes, I think I tweeted halfway through the year that like he was quickly becoming my favourite player to watch. And I think my point about my favourite players of the year being Isaiah Katoa and Hammer and having that different like that pure footballing nerd part about Isaiah Katoa, but then like the watchability, excitability of the hammer. I think Jerome was like the perfect like merge of those two things. Like he had like that footy nous, like amazing, like all footy nerds would love watching him. But then he was also box office too. Like he had highlights that just made you sit back or not sit back, like jump out of your chair and just be like, this is insane. So he had an awesome year. He won the Dally M, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I just felt like that was the thing for me, that it was a reason I liked watching him so much. And I thought he was so good this year, is he had those, the deft touch and the little kicks and those kind of things. And defensively, he knew where to be in certain situations, and that was cool. But yeah, then he also had that other side too of those box office plays. So yeah, I thought that was what got him the very prestigious Golden Sponge Player of the Year award. Simo, yeah, you've gone the same.
Oh, well, I didn't actually mean to. I wrote it in the wrong spot. So, but I can harp on about AFB again. But no, to be honest, I would have said Jerome Hughes if I was actually reading the run sheet properly. But there's a few guys in contention for this. Like Hughes is everything you said in a bag of crisp. Like, what more is there to say about the guy? It was a bit sad, like seeing him at the end of the year starting to get a few little niggles that he hadn't had sort of earlier in the year. It was it was the only thing, but I mean, he could just bottle up this year and just keep it for years to come. It was that good, and that's what you always get in the Dally M Player of the Year. Other candidates we've sort of already touched on, like Angus Crichton, we've talked about already. Really left field one, depending on how you want to award it. As much as it pains me to say, I think Jerome Luai actually had a bloody good year, and look, I would never put him forward because I'm not a huge fan of his, but just when you actually think about respect on the name and what he was able to do just in that Panthers team without Cleary for majority of the year, I think he sort of had that level of authority over the side that I didn't think he was capable of. So if I was to sort of take my biased glasses off, I think I would at least throw Jerome Luai's name in the mix, even though I wouldn't officially vote him in. But I think he's an honourable mention, that's for sure, for mine. Anyone else you want to add there, James, into the Player of the Year? Because I will agree with Brien on Jerome Hughes.
Yeah, I went a little bit left of field. It's a bit of a homer pick for me, but I really like the year that Tom Dearden had. The only reason I went sort of Tom Dearden as probably my Player of the Year over Jerome Hughes was just like what he's surrounded with at the Cowboys and what he had to sort of overcome there. I think, what did he? He had an exceptionally good Origin series. I think he was probably Queensland's best in a beaten side. I think he won the Paul Bowman medal as well as Cowboys Player of the Year. He had a really good pack championship there for Australia. Tackle of the Year on Selwyn Cobbo, like that just sums him up. That effort play to chase him all the way down. He's a Telstra Tracker superstar. I just love everything that he's about. I love the tenaciousness. I love the competitiveness. And he's just really growing into an exceptional leader up there in North Queensland. Like he's a guy that you can tell that squad loves to play for. And I want to sign off by saying, we were the Broncos with Anthony Seibold in charge, and he chose to sign Brodie Croft over Tom Dearden. So that's how we lost one of the greats that could have been wearing maroon for us in the Broncos kit. But I just thought Tom Dearden's year was really, really special. And I think he probably just goes a little bit underrated up there in North Queensland just because they didn't, I guess, have the same amount of success that the Melbourne Storm did with Jerome making the final. But everywhere you look, Tom Dearden was there. He was just an absolute beast. I was so impressed with his season this year. He's young. He's growing into that team. And, when you look at the players he has around him, there's not a lot on offer there really at the Cows. Like that, I think you could make an argument that he did more with probably less, I think, up there than Jerome did, which, both great seasons, but I just really loved everything about Tom Dearden there. Brien, we've wrapped it up there, I reckon. We've spent a lot of time talking. Is there anything else you want to touch on there or add on there for Player of the Year? Tom Dearden's a bit hot. It's a bit of a
Mate,
morose pick. But
my big thing on Tommy Dearden is how good was he for the Kangaroos? Like he was
unreal.
immense. Yeah, like fantastic.
Really good.
And I think there was a lot of I love Twitter for many debates, but there was a lot, and I'd be interested in your take on this, James. There's a lot of back and forth between Bronx fans and Cows fans on like who's better out of Tommy Dearden or Ezra Mam, and why, the Bronx made the right decision or the wrong decision or whatever. Like, obviously it's a bit of like captain hindsight now, especially with what Ezra is going through. But even when, Ezra was scoring those immense tries in the grand final and stuff like that, I did think it was like quite unfair to sort of be like, like obviously he's way better than Tommy did. Like, because Tommy, even at that point, was still so good. Like, and still is so good. I just don't understand, the hate towards him. Like, especially from Bronx fans who seem to, say that he isn't that good. I'm like, I just don't see that at all, personally.
Yeah, mate, we quickly forget, but when he debuted at age 18 and we won the Spoon, there was times in those games we were getting done by like 30 or 40, and the team was so busted that there was times he was like taking hit-ups one off the ruck because we had nothing doing. And I was like, seriously, if you're 18 playing first grade and you're a halfback and no one's going with you, I was like, that's grim for the Broncos, and summed up the Seabold tenure. But it just goes to show you made pretty good stuff, and I think that's come through in the Origin series he's had. He's obviously voted best player for the Cows. Some highlight plays, and Pack Championships wraps it all up with pretty exceptional performances there. I think you can't really criticise him too much. Maybe a couple of moments in Origin, maybe, but I thought he was Queensland's best, to be honest, across all three games. I don't know about you, Simon. I thought he was really good for Maroons. There was a lot of other
He was so
players
good
that went way worse than him.
Yeah, game 3, he was unreal. Like, arguably one of the only Queenslanders that really moved the needle in that game, unfortunately. And I can't really hear any arguments about Tommy Dearden. I feel like any haters, just from Bronx fans, they're probably a bit dirty that he was let go, which was no fault of his own. It was just the management at the time.
Oh, God, no. Horrendous.
So, yeah.
I think the one thing we can put in Tommy Dearden's favour as well, especially with the time of year we are, is in probably, I reckon, like 2 to 3 months' time, we're going to get reports about Tommy Dearden's Bronco and beep test scores, because he's going to be winning those at the Cows. He does it every year, and don't we hear about it? And I love it. I love that time of year where we're hearing about beep test scores, mate. Clint Gutherson, did you hear? He did a thing the other day.
Yeah.
He won the hill, mate. He ran.
Yeah, this is what I like. This is good. We don't need cricket, Brian. We need more of these off-season storylines.
Mate.
Seriously.
Mate, I swear, old friend of the show, Schuster, was winning, all the preseason things and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, oh man, the preseason, there's not much more that excites me than the preseason reports about training and stuff. I love it. Look, we've just ticked over 2 hours, so I appreciate anybody who's still listening. The 10 of you who are still here with us. Congratulations, because we enjoy it. We wanted to sit down and talk through the year, both from our perspective in terms of the takes that we had, and then also footy as a whole, because we like talking about footy. It's a good thing to do on a Sunday night. It's very late now, so I don't know if I'll get it out tonight. I might try and do it after work tomorrow. But if it's in your feeds, thanks for listening throughout the whole year and tonight. Simo, thanks for coming on, mate. I know we'll definitely get you on probably late February to talk through our new. I said to James the other day, I'm like, it's my turn now. Like, you had Asako, he had Tommy Talau. I've got to come up with something. I've got to bunker down over the next 3 months and come up with a CTW who is priced like under 400K, who's just going to absolutely light it up. And I don't know what I'm going to do.
Mate, I reckon Alamoti's your guy. Get him on there, because the listeners are probably sick of hearing about Azarko. I'm just going to keep riding it until the cows come home. You won't hear the end of that for as long as you keep having me on. So.
And fair enough too, mate. Fair enough too.
Yeah, but look, in all fairness, it is good to come back on and just sort of put a bit of a bow on the year that was, and run through the good takes, the bad and the ugly. So thanks for having me back, just to have a bit of accountability for some of these horrible calls this year.
We're all about accountability on this show. We like to say when we're shit, which is quite often, but we celebrate our wins too. James, mate, you're off to probably start buying 2025 premiership material for the Bronx now that you've got Madge Maguire on board, I'm sure. You know, like, I don't know if you've heard, but the boys have spew buckets. So that if there's another preseason report, that's all I need to hear. Broncos Premiers 2025.
Yeah, I love the chat of they're getting their hard edge back, and there's not much chatter from the old boys either, because like, you know, when shit's really hit the fan when the old boys start chirping through the media. So old boys pretty quiet at the moment. They might just be tucking into their off season and just getting horizontal for horizontal season. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens come early next year, because that is my goodness, if there was a coaching seat that was hotter, there's probably not one. Like, he's walking into a hornet's nest there, and that's just the old boys, like, let alone the fandom up there that are fairly biased towards the old Brisbane Broncos. So it'll be a good watch. I think it's going to be really, really interesting for us next year. I'm pretty pumped for it.
Mate, as long as round 1 ticks around and Blake Moser is named in the number 9 jersey, then it all will be
All will
okay
be
in the
good.
world. Yeah, it'll be
Yep.
fine. Yeah, no, 100%. All right, guys, thanks for listening. We will be back sometime early next year, bigger and better than ever. We love it. Thank you so much for your support this year. And as always, up the mighty, mighty Redcliffe Dolphins.
Suspected